on an overnight flight. Now the thing you should know about that, not familiar with you, it's quite a short flight, okay? It's only about 6 or 7 hours at the most, okay? So you don't have a lot of time to get your night's sleep, you know. So in BA terms, therefore comfort was quite important. So this is why in 1989 they were saying travel with us.
This is British Airways Super Club Class seat. The widest seat in the air. But being the widest seat in the air, it isn't the easiest to fit through the door. From May the 1st on all our long-haul routes, the world's widest airline seat. From the airline that cares about everyone that flies. British Airways, the world's favourite airline.
Okay, so there you have it. Fly with us. Why? Because we've got the widest seat in the air. I don't know about you, but I'd be quite worried if I thought the roof could come off my aeroplane. But you know, it's a way of dramatising the message, I guess. Right, fly with us because we've got the widest seat in the air. Okay, brilliant. So what we're going to do is we're going to spend £25 million all over the world, massive advertising campaign in every market in the world, telling everybody that we've got the widest seat in the air. Fantastic investment, brilliant, really happy with that. Everybody knows we've got the widest seat in the air all over the world. And then what happens? Singapore Airlines launch a seat that's half an inch wider than ours. We're stuffed. Okay? What do? You've wasted your whole money on telling people about a competitive advantage that doesn't exist anymore. You know, also, what if you wanted to do something else? What if there was a brilliant idea for great passenger entertainment? What are you going to say? Oh, I know we spent 25 million telling you about the seat, but actually we've got the best passenger entertainment. By focusing on the product, we've completely constrained ourselves. So British Airways at this stage learned this lesson about benefits and customer promise. And what they did was they brought in a bunch of people under a new chief executive called Sir Colin Marshall, who was probably the most famous chief executive of British Airways at the time when they really turned around. And he wanted them to think customer and think customer benefit. So he brought in people from places like Kellogg's and Unilever and Procter & Gamble and consumer companies. And they started working on this, and they did some work thinking about customer insight, and they said, when do people notice a great business class flight? When do you really notice you're having a great flight? Is it at 34,000 feet on your fourth whistle? You know, it might feel pretty good at the time, but you'll regret it in the morning. Yeah. The tone moment of truth, when you step off the plane in the morning. 6 o'clock in the morning, you get off that aeroplane on a cold, wet, horrible London day, and you've got a day's work ahead of you. How do you feel? Are you ready to go and do a day's work? Or do you want to curl up in a corner and go to sleep? And if you could own that moment, that's when you're powerful. So that's what they're trying to do. They want to be better than any other airline at helping customers arrive ready for business.
So, 2 years in New York, and he thinks he can tell us how to run things. Well, we won't have it.
It's all right. I fixed things. He's travelling overnight on the red eye. He had no choice.
Not first class.
Of course not. Company policy.
By the time he gets in, he'll be exhausted. And he won't have had time to incorporate those new figures I sent him in his report.
He'll be hungry and tired.
I've arranged for the chauffeur to bring him straight here, not to the hotel.
Like a lamb to the slaughter, gentlemen.
Morning. New Club World delivers the businessman ready to do business.
Pleasant trip.
Yes, thank you.
New Club World from the world's favourite airline.
Okay, hopefully you can see the difference now. Now, what are we saying? Instead of saying we've got the widest seat, we're now saying we're going to be better than any other airline at helping you arrive ready for business. The reason why bit, do you remember how it had benefit and then the reason to believe on my chart? The reason why was not about what are we going to do, it's about how would that show up for the customer? How would they know? And 3 things came out of the research. Either because they're getting more sleep, or there's less hassle, or they're getting refreshed. The end of it, okay? those words, those 9 words, because there's only 9 words in blue there, became the key to British Airways totally dominating business class travel during the 1990s. I know they've lost it now, but in the 1990s they were totally dominant. Why? First of all, because there are only 9 words. It's very simple, isn't it? You know, it's really tight, everybody can understand it, it's not pages and pages of documents, it's 9 very simple words that say, this is what customers will value. But more importantly, if you look at what happens out here for the travelling customer, the external customer, the travelling public, the first thing is they start to listen to you. And the reason they listen to you is quite simple, because you're now talking about them rather than talking about yourself. I'm now talking about you arriving ready for business rather than let me tell you about my seat. So they start to listen. But more importantly, innovation goes through the roof. Okay? And this becomes your most, this is the most important tool you've got for driving transformation is the customer promise. And I'll tell you why, because what happens is a couple of things, both internally and externally, which is why internal and external transformation go together. Externally, here, innovation improves. Why? Because you're asking yourselves a different question. Traditional thinking about new ideas is, let's get today's product and let's have a brainstorming session on how to make it better. We'll get some flip charts out, we'll all put on pink shirts, we'll get some children's toys on the floor and we'll be very creative and we'll come up with lots of new ideas. And we might come up with some good ideas. There's another way, which is ask yourselves a different question. And that question starts in the customer's world, not yours. So instead of saying, how do we make this better, you throw that away, and what you say is, how else could we help people arrive ready for business? And it's a different question, and therefore gets different answers. And it drove some fantastic innovations, like the arrivals lounge. Up until then, there had only been a lounge before the flight, where you get a drink, a cup of coffee or something before the flight. What this instigated was the idea of a lounge at the end of the flight in the morning. And you go there and you can have a shower, you can change your clothes, you can have your breakfast, and you can get ready for the day ahead. Nobody had thought of that. Within 2 weeks of opening it, we already were working on how to build an extension, because everybody wanted to go there. The competitive airlines found they had to do it, because they were all hearing what we were doing. So they would put people in minibuses and take them to local hotels for a shower, because they didn't have any space and they hadn't built anything. We got a real edge. Was it because we were more creative? No. Was it because we were cleverer? No. The only difference was we asked a different question to the question they were asking, and it started in the customer's world. But internally, it made a huge difference as well in terms of the transformation. Because what you do is you start to use it as a way of bringing the customer promise to life for everybody inside the organisation. In the same way that you need to share insights with everybody, you need to share the customer promise so that everybody knows, well, what weight do I play? And that's what we did. So things like the IT function, the technology people at BA, were given this. We said, how are you normally measured? They said, well, are the systems working? Do the computers function efficiently as usual? And we said, well, how about that as well? Could you play a role? What role could IT play in helping customers arrive ready for business? Either help with more sleep or less hassle or whatever. That's why British Airways, IT department, looked at less hassle. And that's why British Airways was the first airline into electronic ticketing. And the idea of ticketless travel where you don't have to go to a ticket desk and it makes the airport process much easier. They were first, again, not because they were better technologists, but because the focus of their technology was on a customer promise rather than just internal systems. And that's why the customer promise becomes important internally. And what it allows to happen is that you put the customer at the centre of everybody's work, and ideas start to come from everywhere. I went to New York on a trip, and I went to the lounge on my way home, just before going home, and I had a word with 2 little old ladies who used to work in the lounge behind the desk to greet you when you arrived. Lovely ladies they were. And I was having a little chat with them just to say hello and introduce myself and have a talk and whatever. And I said, oh, has anybody shown you the customer promise? And they said, the what? I thought, mental note, have a word with the American management about why they haven't heard about it. But I had a word with them and I took them through it. And they said, oh, that's interesting. And we just left it at that or whatever. And I just went home back to London, or back to my office in London. And about a week later, I got a phone call. And it was these 2 little old ladies. And they called me up in my office and they said, we've had an idea. And I said, great, tell me about it. They said, well, you know that thing you said about more sleep that you showed us? We were just thinking to ourselves, people come to the lounge and they spend, an hour, sometimes an hour and a half in the lounge. And, they don't do very much. They have a cup of coffee or something. What if we decided to serve them their dinner while they're in the lounge? And then when they get onto the aeroplane, they'd have all the time to sleep. And we just thought, what a simple, obvious idea. I tell you, no airline was doing this. I know they all do it now, but in those days they weren't doing it. And we thought, that's a really simple idea. So we offered it as an option. We got an 85% take-up on customers. Everybody wanted to do it because it was such an obvious thing. And it had come from two of the most junior people in the whole organisation. So that's why, for me, the customer promise is the most powerful tool we've got. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a break, because it's after past now. We'll take a break.